If any more proof were needed of the real motives behind the administration's insistence on retroactive immunity for the telecom companies who helped spy on Americans with them. There are the remarks this morning from Scott Stanzel of the White House. In our third story in the countdown, Mr. Stanzel said, quote, "We have always been supportive of providing retroactive immunity to the companies that felt a patriotic duty to help their country in the aftermath of the most significant terrorist attack in the history of this nation. We think that's important. The opposing arguments for that, I assume, are because they want trial lawyers to be able to sue those companies. We don't think that's right." Nothing about listening to terrorists, nothing about stopping future threats. Just an interest in protecting corporations against suits by ACLU volunteer attorneys, none of them evil trial lawyers. At the White House and the radical right are living in some kind of waking dream wherein logic not only no longer applies, but reality can turn into fantasy and back again, and it seems normal to them, is also underscored by this. A new House GOP video featured on the front page of its website, ripping off the TV series 24 and every other suspense thriller ever. It appears to have little purpose other than to try to scare the pants off the American public.
Earlier this week.
Would you say that the country is in greater danger now of terrorist attack because this law has expired?
Increased danger, and it will increase more and more as time goes on.
People have to understand around here that the quality of the intelligence that we're going to be receiving is going to be degraded. It's going to be degraded. It's already going to be degraded.
There is no urgency. There is no urgency. There is no urgency.
Joining us now, Dan Froomkin, the author of the White House Watch column at WashingtonPost.com. Pleasure to talk to you tonight, sir.
Great to be here, Keith.
When Aaron Sorkin wrote in that movie, The American President, that there's a certain kind of politician who is interested in two things and two things only, making you afraid of it and telling you who's to blame for it, do you think he could have imagined it would get as literal as that?
Well, you know, that is how you win elections,
yeah.
At least sometimes. That video is just something, isn't it? I mean, you know, generating a sense of blind terror is certainly something you want to try to do when you're making movies or television, but it's a heck of a way to run a country. And what we're seeing here really is that the Republican argument on behalf of this surveillance law is really very simple. It's be afraid. It's do it or die. And you know, just as a journalist, I'm sort of offended at this notion that political leaders can argue on behalf of a position without explaining what it is, without explaining why their position is superior to their critics, without engaging their critics in conversation, without engaging the arguments of their critics, and instead just basically trying to scare the pants off people. You know, that used to be our leaders used to tell us not to be afraid, and the message from this video is just, I mean, it's just astonishing.
Is it not? Can it not be argued, though, that there's always been a portion of our political base in which that is the whole message? I mean, dating back well beyond the Soviets, go back to the anarchists in the 1880s, go back to the French in the 1790s and the first war we almost got into over nothing at all. Is this just a sophisticated version of what our ancestors have always gone through?
Well, it's very potent, and fear is a great motivator. But, you know, I really do like to think back to, for instance, World War II, when you had a leader like FDR who told people not to be afraid. And, you know, by golly, there's a lot more to be afraid of then than there is now. So yeah, there's a long tradition of this working. But I don't know that it makes it doesn't mean it's always going to work. Let's put it that way.
Is this, in this day and age, is this ultimately just a game of chicken, that it would be obvious to a 3-year-old that if national security depends upon passing a bill with the FISA shortcuts in it, and the president kills that bill and threatens to veto that bill, it's the president's fault if anything happens, but the Democrats are simply actually afraid of something else, or just afraid something will happen and they'll get blamed for it? Is that ultimately what this is about?
Well, the Democrats are certainly afraid. I mean, there's been very little backbone on their behalf on the Hill. I do think that if, for instance, they were to pass a bill that didn't include for instance, the retroactive immunity, and that President Bush vetoed it, and presumably because of that retroactive immunity thing, then I do think that at that point at least, certain issues would come into focus, and one of them certainly would be the issue which you've been calling a lot of attention to, which is this notion that financial security for the telecoms seems to be taking precedence over anything else. And then we'd ask ourselves, what is it about this retroactive immunity that makes it so important? Is it just the financial future of the telecoms? And of course, they're only going to be liable for these billions of dollars if they lost these cases. So you've got the other questions: are they? Are there other things that we're asking the telecoms to do that they're going to stop doing that we don't even know about?
Of course,
or is it really an issue of the leadership of this country not wanting the public to find out what's been going on?
As we found out, of course, the telecoms will stop if we forget to pay them on time, which has actually happened. Dan Froomkin of the Washington Post, WashingtonPost.com. Thanks and have a good weekend.
Thank you.